Hi, this is Wrestling Dr. Hal Lee for Pro Wrestling Extra. I'm here with Francisco Ciatso.
Absolutely.
He's the king of Florida. Let me tell you something, I think he's right. I've watched his matches. Matter of fact, I'm acquainted with you from a while back.
Many years back, yeah. Absolutely.
The end of my career was like the beginning of your career.
Okay.
And at your beginning, it was obvious that you were a wrestler and that you were going somewhere and you were going to make some. You enjoyed every second of the ring. When you came back to the dressing room, you were more excited than when you went in there. And that's really something I noticed. Let me ask you a question. Where were you trained?
Originally, I went to Exotic Adrian Street School, Skull Crushers, in Pensacola, Florida. I was originally had gone to Jerry Gray's School of Wrestling in Orlando. Got taken for a ride, took my money, left town, never saw him again. So that was a great introduction to the pro wrestling business. I was flipping through Pro Wrestling Illustrated one day, and was just, and I'll never forget it. On the left-hand side, it was it said, "You want to be a wrestler," with big dollar signs. Of course, you learn later on in years that that's a big rib. But nonetheless, I called Adrian and let him know what went on and what happened. And he said, "Before you give me any money, come up and take a look at the school, take a look at my operation, see what I have." And I drove up there with a friend of mine and took a look at everything. From the second I stepped foot into the school, I knew that's what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be. He was very, very nice, very respectful. Didn't BS me, didn't try to BS me. Let me stay at his apartment complex free of charge, which is unheard of, with Adrian. Adrian's all money and all business. He must have saw something in me. I really don't know why he didn't charge me, but he didn't. Charged me very little to do any training. I lived there for about 6 months, and he really took care of me. I met one of my best friends in the entire world at that school, Stu Allen. He goes by the Dominator. He was a really big star in England. Runs Extreme World Warfare. Got me set up over there, years later with his company, as well as Brian Dixon, British All-Star Wrestling. So
that's good. I know you went through the power plant, WCW's power plant, for a while.
That was rough. I went up for one of their tryout deals that they had up there, and it was I heard horror stories, about it. But I was like, if I can make it through the 3 days that those guys go through up there, maybe I got what it takes. And that's where I met Paul Mike Kaner. I almost called him Paul Heyman. Mike Kaner, Prince Iakea, and God, he killed me. And Sarge was rough, and the whole operation was just a killer. But I made it through. I'm not going to sit here and say I was a big tough guy going through it. I mean, I puked my guts up. I mean, they had me tied to a post doing Hindu squats, and it was absolutely amazing the stuff that those guys went through. But I'm proud to say I made it through that third day, and that's something I always hold in high regard when guys complain about how sore they are, or how they can't make it to the gym, or they can't do this, or they can't do that. I get a kick out of it because I think back to that and what those guys went through on a daily basis. I mean, that was training daily, Monday through Friday or whatever the case is.
Well, that's part of paying your dues, and you've definitely paid your dues.
Yeah.
One of the things that people talk about you is how you pay back so much stuff. You work with the young guys. I work out at the gym with a couple of guys, and I've seen them tell me, I talked to, they call you Frankie.
Yeah.
I talked to Frankie and got some advice from him. I mean, this is something that you're known for. I mean, there's a lot of guys that give advice, and there's some real leaders in this locker room.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you. But one of the main ones that everybody speaks of is you. And paying back to this business is important. I'm an old veteran. I would love to pay back, but my time is gone. You're there with them. So what you can give them is experience and knowledge they can use that night in the ring. And that's important.
Well, one thing I always try to pride myself on is because when I broke in, it was very difficult. Guys have it, I don't want to say easy now, but it's a lot easier than when I broke in 97, 98. It wasn't the easiest business to break into. So I didn't have a lot of advice and a lot of help, until I met up with Ron Nemi, in Tampa, when he was running IPW out of Tampa. I didn't get a lot of advice, so a lot of the lumps and mistakes, and I made all hands on and busted up and banged up and doing things the wrong way. Just kind of learned by trial and error until I got with Ron Nemi's group in Tampa. So I try to watch a lot of the young guys that are coming up, and there's quite a few that are just some of the most respectful guys, that I've come across. One that sticks out of my mind is Wild Child Joey Kidman out of Georgia. I worked with him about a year ago, and he was very respectful, worked hard, had a good look, and every time I'm on a card with him, in fact he's on the card tonight, he always asked me to watch his match, and that's something that, when I was coming up, I always made sure to watch, ask whether it was, Bugsy McGraw, whether it was, like a Horace Boulder, whether it was, the guys that I was coming up with when I started, to always make sure they watch my matches, please watch my match, give me advice, always looking for advice, and that's the one thing I tell guys is be open to advice, but be open to feedback, constructive feedback. You never want to break somebody down and tell them how horrible they are and so on and so forth. And you want to try at the very least to give them the best advice. I mean, if someone's horrible, they're horrible. Everyone starts out horrible. No one starts out, tremendous. You don't start out as Ric Flair.
No, I always tell people it's the same business as being a carpenter. It takes them 5 years to learn how to drive a nail. Well, it takes about 5 years to learn how to wrestle too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me change up a little bit on that. I know one of your hobbies, something that you're really interested in, is theme parks. Where did that come from?
I'm a big kid, man. I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe it was because when, my mom was a single mom bringing me up, and we didn't have a lot of money, and that's not a big sob story, but it's the truth. And she would save up all year to take me to a place like Disney or Epcot or SeaWorld or one of those places, and so I guess I just fell in love with theme parks at the time, whether it was Disney or SeaWorld, whatever the case may be, and ever since then I'm a theme park freak. I mean, I love going to Disney and Epcot. Me and Simon Says, I mean, we'll get a bunch of guys together from the Royal Empire or whatever, and we'll just go be kids for a day, ride roller coasters and drink beer, do shots, and get back on roller coasters and drink beer and do more shots and get back on the roller coasters, and it's just a blast. I just I forget about wrestling for a day, forget about real life, and just go be a kid for a while. It's a blast.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. You mentioned Ron Nemi. He's got a big show coming up in Daytona. Do you have to remember the date that is?
Yeah, it's October 27th. It's called Hot Day in Hell. Chris Lash is his partner. Chris Lash is famous, infamous, whatever you want to call it, doing the Break the Barrier group up in, if I'm not mistaken, it was at the old ECW arena in South Philly, I believe. And this is going back many, many years. We brought all independents, I think, from all over the country, and that's why they called it Break the Barrier, because there was no barriers there. Everyone just worked and did it for the good of the business. And Chris Lash, I mean, he's done countless things. That's the one thing that sticks out in my mind, is the Break the Barrier. And Ron Nemi was a part of that with the Shane Twins, Jet Jaguar, and so on. And we worked for Chris about 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And in Daytona, he was Palm Coast. And Palm Coast never was known for wrestling at all. Drew a really, really good house. Chris Lash is an incredible promoter, and we had a really good show. And then, unfortunately, Chris Lash's dad passed away shortly after that, so the shows didn't continue. He moved back up to Pennsylvania, and I was back in Florida. So him and Ron Nemi together is going to be insane. It's going to be absolutely insane. The show's going to be huge. I mean, there's the Shane Twins are coming out of retirement, working the Dark City Fight Club. That's a match that I would pay to see. Former TNA star Jesse Neal. Bringing in managerial legend, others out Jimmy Hart, and then take your pick all up and down the line of the top Florida indie talent, whether it's the marquee Bruce Santee, New Jersey Bad Boy Eric Cooper, Simon Says, Shooter Storm, Off the Wall Sancho. I mean, I could go on and on and on about this list. Haggis. I mean, it's insane the amount of guys that are on this show. So it's going to be huge.
Good. I tell you, there is some of the best talent in Florida, Georgia, that I think has been ever.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are really. You have so many places to work now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of promotions. You're able to get out there and work. Back in the 80s, we were lucky if we had one show a month. I mean, lucky if you had one show a month.
Yeah.
The bigger groups all had families. They didn't let everybody come in there. We were outlaws working. It's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Now you guys get a chance to work and develop your talent.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. I think you've developed your talent.
I
think
that.
You're that close, and it should be gone. You should be at the next level.
Well, I tell you, man, it's been a great ride, and I love it. You do it at this level because you love it. Nobody's going to lie and tell you make a mint, at this level, because you don't. I mean, I've been to Deep South. I worked under Bill DeMott for almost 2 years, in their developmental territory. I worked for TNA, doing non-contract work for years, from Nashville to Orlando. England, China, Puerto Rico, Cayman Islands, Dominican Republic. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But at the end of the day, you always want to come home, and you always want to work in front of your home crowd. And the guys I travel with are just unbelievable. We're like a big family, a very dysfunctional family, but a family nonetheless. So I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. The Florida wrestling fans are some of the best in the world. They don't always love me, which is fine by me. But at the end of the day, if they buy a ticket and there's an ass every 16 inches, then I'm happy. So.
All right. Listen, I appreciate you coming and doing this interview with me, and it's a pleasure. talking with you again.
Thank you, sir.
And I'd love to do it again if we get time at another show.
Absolutely.
Sit down and maybe I can come up with some better questions.
Hey, you did great, man. I really appreciate you taking the time with me.
All right, thank you. This is the Wrestling Dr. Hal Lee for Pro Wrestling Extra. Thanks.